You are watching or listening to Purham and Associates. For more information, go to rpurham.com or follow me on all social media platforms and subscribe at RPURHAM. Thanks. See you over there. Hey, good day to you all. Welcome to Purham and Associates and happy post-Labor Day weekend. I hope you all had a fantastic weekend and stayed out of trouble, didn't shoot at nobody, didn't get shot at. You know, that's how we roll around Texas. Texas and you know, for those up in Chicago, unfortunately had a crazy weekend as always. It seemed like, you know, they only wait till the holidays to do stuff like that, but you know, it is what it is. But folks, we got a very special guest with us today, and he, without, you know, much of an introduction, but it's been a while since he's been on, but I'm going to give him an introduction. You know, we have Mark Mix. He is the president of the committee and foundation, well, he became the president and committee of the foundation in 2003, under the leadership of Mr. Mix. He is the National Right to Work Legal Defense Foundation president, and he has continued to provide unparalleled free legal assistance. Ladies and gentlemen, that's free. You heard that, free legal assistance to workers, and has utilized cutting-edge legal strategies to protect workers from the abuses of compulsory unionism. Mr. Mix frequently appears on national television shows including Fox News Channel, Your World with Neil Cavuto, Glenn Beck, and Friends, Fox and Friends, and has also appeared multiple times on CNBC and CNN. Mr. Mix also often serves as a guest on nationally syndicated radio shows such as the Lars Larson Show, Jason Lewis Show, Michael Reagan Show, and the Jim Bohannon Show. Similarly, Mr. Mix's writings have appeared in national outlets such as the Wall Street Journal, Washington Times, Investors Business Daily, Washington Examiner, and National Review. His pieces have also been featured in widely read regional publications across the country, including the Detroit Free Press, the Orange County Register, and the Detroit News. Mr. Mix is also a sought-after speaker on political technology and grassroots lobbying tactics. He often travels across the country speaking and training participants in the political process. Mark Mix holds a bachelor's in finance from James Madison University and an associate's degree in marketing from the State University of New York. Prior to joining the National Right to Work Committee in 1990, Mr. Mix worked for several state-level right to work groups. He joined the National Right to Work Legal Defense Foundation in 1999. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing the some and presenting the others, Mr. Mark Mix. Good morning, sir. Welcome back, and it's been a long time.
Yeah, Randy, it's good to be with you. You know, that introduction is really, really good. You had like a saddle in the background, you had a bear skin, you had cars and automobiles and pictures, and all I got is this like boring backdrop. So I apologize for that. I wish I could bring a little more pizzazz to the show.
Nah, you good. You good. Yeah, I actually love your background. Actually, I really like that. So it works out. I might have to add that into my new intro when I create it. Mark, tell us what you've been up to. You know, I think it's been like a year since you was on last, somewhere around that ballpark. So give us an update of what's been going on in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, well, Randy, it's been a pretty significant change with the change of the administration. Obviously, with the Biden administration for the last 4 years, we had, by his own admitting, he's the most pro-union president in American history. And for the last 4 years, he has done just about anything he possibly could to put his thumb on the scale, giving union officials more power over workers. Now, that's a really interesting way to look at it, because he didn't help the American worker very much, but he did help union officials. And he used the executive branch of the presidency, Article 2 of the Constitution, through his executive power to really give them more power and more privilege over the American worker. And Randy, as you and I have talked about in the past, this disconnect between union officials on one hand and rank and file workers on the other is growing wider and wider all the time because of the disconnect on public policy issues. And I think we saw that manifest itself last November with the election. Donald Trump actually won a majority of private sector union households and union members' votes, despite the fact that the Democrats got basically 99.7% of the money that unions put into the political process in the presidential campaign. So that's changed the environment quite a bit. Our litigation program rolls on. We have about 265 active cases right now, to your point, on behalf of individual employees, providing free legal services to them. We've got legislation working in Congress and across the country. So a lot going on still, but there's certainly a lot to talk about for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you brought up a great point. I'm in Austin, Texas, so, it's pretty big labor sector down in these parts.
Yeah.
And you see, the workers, they were like wearing Trump hats, they were T-shirts at Trump rallies, and it was just like, this is so odd. Usually they like with the Democrats, but it speaks to the resonation that President Trump brought to the table compared to what Biden was, like you just said, empowering the union bosses, and it was kind of like squelching the rights and the voices of the workers, and they were just simply tired of it. And I wouldn't be surprised to see that the union bosses see that their livelihood is in jeopardy, and they actually say, you know what, maybe the Republican Party is where we need to go, and let's just shift that way. And going forward, we'll see a different dynamic, like it was in the early '80s. Because I remember in the '80s, the unions were mostly Republicans back in the day, in a sense. So it's weird to see the changes like that over the decades. But I wanted to ask you, speaking about workers, President Trump is in this fight right now with federal workers, firing them and what have you.
Several of them, yeah.
Yeah, a few of them. Particularly with what's her name, Lisa Cook. Yeah, Lisa Cook. She's the Federal Reserve governor. I get this impression, being retired myself, so I dealt with a lot of the Army civilians. So, and they were very, they had this sense of entitlement, especially the ones that was like GS5 and above. They had this sense of entitlement that, they can just come to work and put their feet up on the desk and they can't be fired. So that kind of changed over the last few years, and he's going in and firing them now. Do you see cases come to you or your organization about what's going on in that regard? Like, they're like, hey, I'm a federal employee, he can't fire me, help me out. Are you getting any of that going on right now?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, Randy, and it's a big issue. I mean, you're one of the few people that understand kind of this Article 2 power. This is the kind of unitary executive authority from Article 2. And to your point, and I got to tell you, we've been involved in it up to our eyeballs. We have a couple of cases. We have one in the Fifth Circuit, which is Texas, on behalf of a Starbucks barista, of all people, where she came to us trying to get out of a union, trying to decertify a union that was put into her workplace, I think back in 2021 or 22. And basically she said, I don't want to have anything to do with this, and we want to get out. Well, the National Labor Relations Board that was nominated and confirmed by the Senate, nominated by Biden, basically blocked that election. The general counsel that was a Biden nominee said, no, we're not going to give you an election. You got to stay in. Starbucks is a bad actor. They're a bad employer, so we're not going to let you have a vote to try to get out of the union. So we put together a legal theory back in March of last year called a removal theory of members of agencies in the executive branch. Now, the Federal Reserve is kind of an interesting question with Lisa Cook because, are they federal? Are they reserved? They're neither of the two. They were created, in 1917, I think, or something like that. But the question was relevant for the National Labor Relations Board, because when Joe Biden was elected back in 2021, one of the first things he did was fire the general counsel of the National Labor Relations Board. And Randy, the National Labor Relations Board is the 5-member board that adjudicates labor policy for all private sector workers across the country, vis-a-vis unions and employers and employees. Yeah. And so this was the first time that had ever been done. And it turns out that the president did have the authority to fire the general counsel. He did this in the first 20 minutes of his administration. That's how important the National Labor Relations Board is to his constituency, his stakeholders, if you will, i.e. the unions. Yes. Well, in this last Congress, President Trump actually just fired a member of the National Labor Relations Board, too. And the case that we filed back in March promoted the theory that the president had the authority to do this. Because under Article 2, the only person that's accountable to the general public is the President of the United States. And all of these agencies and executive agencies have grown up to the point where they're doing things that probably shouldn't have done. And that leads us back to another Supreme Court case that basically attacked what was known as the Chevron deference, that said these agencies had all this power to do these things. And the Supreme Court had something to say about that, and they kind of reined in these agencies. Well, the case here involving Lisa Cook at the Federal Reserve and the board member that Trump fired after he got in at the National Labor Relations Board goes to a case all the way back to 1935, a case called Humphrey's Executor. And this was a case where Roosevelt asked a member of the Federal Trade Commission to step down because he didn't like this person who was appointed by Hoover. And they wrote a letter and said, you should resign. We don't have the same worldview. Humphrey said, no, I'm not resigning. So the second letter went out and said, you need to resign or you're going to be fired. Roosevelt fired him. And that case, believe it or not, Randy, went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. Humphrey's executor, because Humphrey had passed away in the interregnum between him being removed and the end of his term, and his executor said, no, you owe us money. And so Humphrey's estate won a case against the United States saying you need to pay him for the remainder of his term because he could not be fired. The president couldn't fire him. So from 1935 till today, that precedent has stayed in place. It's been winnowed away in a couple of different Supreme Court cases, and there's a real indication that the Supreme Court wants to get to it based on the NLRB case that preceded this Lisa Cook issue. In the meantime, Elon Musk used the same argument in a case regarding SpaceX that was just resolved by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in Austin, Texas, or Dallas, Texas, that basically said that Elon Musk was likely to win on this case because the president should have authority to remove a member of the National Labor Relations Board. That's a long story to get to the question that you asked, that the same principle basically applies with the Federal Reserve. Does the president have the authority to remove board members? We believe that the U.S. Supreme Court is prepared to say yes, they do, and overturn that Humphrey's executor precedent from 1935. So I think, despite the legal, kind of manipulations of this and all the iterations of legal process, the president's going to have the authority to do that ultimately. Sorry for that long question, but I wanted to take you through the narrative.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, because I needed that deep dive, and I'm sure the audience needed that deep dive to understand, because I'm under the impression, right, that any agency that's under the executive, the president is over the executive, so therefore he has the authority, the clear authority, based on Article 2 of the Constitution, to hire, fire, remove, whatever you want to go, close down the whole building. He has the authority. Of course, through the consent of Congress, depending on appropriations and all of that minutia. But overall, so as far as the personnel goes, that's his prerogative. The people generally serve at the pleasure of the president. That is my understanding of how that all works. So when I see and hear that, I can't be fired, I work for the federal government and I work for this agency, the president's not over me. It's like, huh? I scratch my head because I'm confused as to that relationship and how that works. So thank you for that clarification, because I'm sure a lot of people are probably trying to figure it out just like I am. Like, if he's the president of the United States and he's over these agencies, if they're under the executive, then he should have the authority to fire them. So I'm very curious to see how the Supreme Court is going to rule on that case on Humphrey's executive, and see if they overturn that. Because if they do overturn that, what would be the implications, I guess you could say, going forward for future administrations? Because I know, we're coming to the tail end of the Trump administration. So going forward, will future presidents have the authority then to just hire and fire at will federal employees at that point?
Yeah, well, the Humphreys executor question went to the question of whether or not these agencies were making policy, and they had kind of judge, jury, and executioner powers. And the National Labor Relations Board certainly does. They can impose monetary fines, they can impose, back payments, interest payments, all kinds of things on people that violate the law. And we want people that violate the law to have punishment. But therein lies the rub. The question that goes a little bit deeper to just kind of the employee structure of the federal government is another one that is on the plate and being litigated, and that is that the president said that basically, the question, well, let's go to the basic question of should the federal government be unionized, and should the federal government be mandated to bargain with unions over terms and conditions of employment? And that's a really important question, and it goes to kind of the core of what's happening here with President Trump right now and all of these agencies and all these employees at the Social Security Administration, the Veterans Administration, all those places where all of a sudden you have someone that's looking at how the government's running and finding places where we can save money. The whole Doge exercise with Elon Musk, these things that are, the USAID, all of these things where all of a sudden the taxpayers get a peek at what's happening with the federal government saying, my gosh, we are bloated, we are overdone, and we've got to make some changes. The idea that he has basically said, we're going to stop negotiating over terms and conditions of employees with these unions is really a significant battle going forward. Because, it was Franklin Roosevelt, Randy, that said, when asked about this in 1935 or 36, somebody wrote him a letter and said, why don't we unionize government? Franklin Roosevelt said it's unthinkable that we would unionize government. It's not the same as the private sector where you have substitute goods and you have competition. Basically, the government, by definition, is a monopoly. They're doing things that no one else can do. Yeah. And so how do you apply a monopoly, union monopoly model on a monopoly of government and then say that somehow this is about dignity and respect and all that stuff? You can't do it. And it's a serious question. And the president has raised that issue about who controls the federal government. Is it union officials at the NTEU, National Treasury's Employee Union, or the American Federation of Government Employees? Or does it AFSCME, the SEIU? Or, to your point, is it the President of the United States? So it's a question that remains unanswered. But here's the implication. Your question's a good one because, and I smile a little bit because it's a double-edged sword. This means that the federal government can change quickly with the changing of administration. Not that it doesn't. There are 4,000 political appointees in every administration that get changed out every election. What you're talking about is the bureaucracy. Yeah. And that's a bigger question and one that probably will get answered, although the whole idea of this lawfare, Randy, is to keep these litigations in play until the next administration comes in and then go back to the standard operating procedure, right? Yep. But I think he's done it early enough that there should be questions and there should be some resolution about the power of the president over these agencies.
That's you brought up something that I kind of laughed at when you said that the federal government is a monopoly. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody came along and sued the government for antitrust laws. So you got.
Well, they are exempt, and interesting enough,
the government has to break up.
Yeah, actually, the unions are exempt from antitrust too, which is kind of an interesting privilege they have to be exempt from antitrust. But it's a question that's going to be, I think, probably resolved over the next 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thank you because you actually answered my next question, and I was going to say, for your organization, you don't necessarily work in favor of unions, but for the employees under unions that may have a dispute with the union. Is that correct, or am I off base there? Yeah.
Everything we do, Randy, is helping employees basically protect and preserve their rights in the American workplace. Unfortunately, when we talk about labor unions, everyone has this perception that it's big business versus big labor, or big business versus the working man. Well, a lot of controversies arise between union members and workers that are forced under these union monopolies and the unions that, quote, claim to represent them. And, getting back to our original kind of entry into this discussion today, we talked about the disconnect politically between union officials and rank and file workers. And that's one of the things that precipitates a lot of the litigation that we do. Last week, we filed cases on behalf of 3 or 4 employees that were basically objecting to being forced to pay for the union political agenda, meaning you can't work. Texas is a right to work state, so you can get out of financial support for a union. But in the 24 states across the country that don't have right to work laws, Randy, you can be fired if you don't tender dues or fees to a union. I mean, whether you're the best worker or the worst worker, whether you're a white worker, black worker, yellow worker, doesn't matter. If you don't pay, you don't work. Yeah. And that's outrageous. But one of the injustices that comes from that, Randy, is the idea that the unions use all this money for political politics and public policy debate and lobbying and all those things. And oftentimes a lot of members disagree with what they're doing. We saw that in the last election, as I already commented on. So yes, all of our work is on behalf of employees, usually against the unions that they're fighting over issues just like this.
Gotcha. And thank you for that clarification. You know, the Department of Veteran Affairs, they're going through these, you know, I'm not going to say radical changes, but they're going through these changes as well. They're firing, you know, unneeded workers and doctors and everything else. And I go to the VA. I was at the VA last week, and I actually sat there for over an hour. Almost, it was right at an hour. For my appointment, and that has never been the case. I'm usually, as soon as I show up, you know, I'm usually seen probably maybe 5 minutes early than my appointment time, maybe 10 minutes past, just depending. But an hour almost, I was like, I had to go to the counter. I was like, hey, what's going on? Did y'all forget about me? And they was like, oh no, we're just really backed up right now. And then so I finally got to the back, talked to my nurse. We always joke around and talk about different ththings, catching up. And I said, hey, what's going on today? You know, what's with the time? And she said, man, we didn't fire so many people. we're so behind right now. But she also said something that was very key, and I keyed in on it. She was just kind of like had diarrhea at the mouth. And she said some of the workers have quit intentionally because they were being given the workload of the workers that were fired. So it was kind of like a malicious obedience in the sense of, well, we're going to make this look bad, you know, by just not coming to work, or we're just going to quit and make it seem like, you know, it's a strain on the system caused by the administration, when it was kind of like an internal orchestrated thing. And so I said, that's interesting that some of the workers actually opted to quit and, you know, take a bonus or take a, you know, severance pay type of package, whatever.
Severance.
And it was like, I wonder if this is happening across different agencies, and you see this in the media, like, well, you know, the Trump administration is firing all these people and it's causing a strain and this, and that, and the third. I want to get your thoughts on, are employees in this domain, in that situation, coming to your organization and say, hey, I'm being unfairly fired or I had to resign because of politics? Are you seeing any of that?
Yeah, we've had some federal employees come to us. Yeah, we've had somebody from the Department of Justice that Biden signed an executive order basically for agreeing to a union contract for them. But, you know, Randy, the VA is really an important part of this debate, because one of the things that we did find with the VA, and we didn't find it, but folks have looked at it, was one of the things like official time. The unions at the VA they used 750,000 hours specifically for union time. These are employees of the VA that are doing nothing but union work, wow. But yet they're being paid by the federal government to basically do 100% work. And we were paying for their offices, their computers, their phones. And basically, that's one of the things that's happened, is saying, okay, no more official time. And so these workers have to go back to work and doing their kind of federal work that they've been hired for. That was a really important issue. But, you know, look, there are things going on, and I think, to your point, I hadn't heard basically that there were maybe folks that were saying, hey, let's make Trump look extra bad by not showing up to work. I suspect that union officials would promote that type of behavior. And, you know, if there's one agency for sure that we need to take care of, and the Veterans Administration is one of them. One of my old friends, Robert Wilkie, was the Secretary of the VA under the first Trump administration, and had a chance to kind of watch him discuss what was going on there. And obviously, providing the services to you and our veterans that have served the country is a really important function. And it would be unfortunate to learn that they're trying to, you know, basically use you as a pawn in this kind of battle against Trump. Yeah. And that would be unfortunate. I haven't seen evidence that other places, but I'm sure if it's happening there, perhaps it's happening other places as well.
It's Austin. Nothing surprises me here anymore. So, you know, yeah. What it is. But, Mark, I appreciate you being here today. I know you got to run. Tell people how they can follow you, support you, and the organization, and all that good stuff, sir.
Yeah, Randy. Well, listen. Thanks for the opportunity. It's good to be on with you again, and thanks for your interest. If you're a worker that has questions about your workplace rights, vis-a-vis unionization in your workplace, you can contact the foundation. We have 17 staff lawyers that do nothing but represent employees for free. That website is nrtw.org. nrtw.org. If you're interested in what's going on legislatively, whether it be in Washington or in Texas or in any state where you might be watching this, you can go to the committee's website, which is nrtwc.org, and you can look at the legislation in your state or in Congress that we're working on that is designed to help expand workers' rights in the workplace or defend what little rights they have against continuing increasing of union power. So nrtwc.org for legislation.
Awesome. Mark, thank you so much for being here today once again, and look forward to bringing you back, more often and giving us updates on what's going on, because this is important. A lot of people don't understand this stuff, and they think that, if I'm fired, I'm fired. Oh, well, let me just go find another job, not knowing that they may have been erroneously or maliciously fired, and they have the right to, compensation or to keep their job. So thank you for what you're doing out there and to your organization. I salute you guys for keeping up the good fight, and appreciate you.
Yeah. Randy, I salute you. Thank you for the opportunity. It's a privilege to be on with you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely, sir. You take care. God bless you. Be safe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Keep fighting. I know you will.
Absolutely. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Mitz. That was a very important conversation for those out there that probably don't know or understand how labor laws, regulations, unions, and being a non-union member, how all that stuff works. You get into the minutia of all that, and you gotta kind of like navigate that on top of your work, on top of your life and everything else. And so you got organizations like that you can reach out to and just ask a simple question like, hey, can my boss do this? Or hey, can my union do this to me? Or and they can give you a yes or no answer, and it's free. Hello. We all like free. I love free. Freedom. Hello. But no. Seriously, that was some great information and great stuff today, and I hope that you all got something from that. And this is what I love to do. I talk to people from across the spectrum on various topics and things, and learn just like you, along with you. I didn't know some of this stuff, to be honest. So I'm gonna go back on the replay and write down those court cases so I can learn more about that, because I think that's something important going forward in the future, and how to observe intelligently on these issues that's coming up, because we see that we're becoming more of a litigious society, and you're having not only in the political arena but in the business world, where we're using lawfare to get our point across, if you will. So I think this is something important to understand precedent, and understand, how precedent can be overturned. We're seeing the Supreme Court overturn a lot of things based on public opinion. Public opinion, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, actually drives a lot of judicial cases at the Supreme Court level. We saw that with Brown versus Board of Education. We've seen that recently. In the last few years back now, but recently with the Roe v. Wade, just the mindset of things change over time, so that will also drive, based on, the members of the court, how they're going to decide, well, the public, they're not like that anymore, or, well, the views change, so we got to mature, we got more immature in some cases. And so these cases get overturned, so we gotta stay on top of it and understand how all that works. So, but folks, I'm not gonna sit here and ramble for the next few minutes or however long. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump up out of here. It is, the start of a new week in a sense, and yeah, like I said, I hope you all enjoyed Labor Day yesterday, and I will catch you all. It won't be Friday because I'll be out of town. So I will catch you all next week. I believe somewhere around there. The schedule of mine. Woo! But yeah, I'll catch y'all soon. So take care. God bless. Be safe. And let's see. Is there anything else? Oh yeah. There is one more thing. A couple more things. Public service announcements, as always. Don't forget to support my book project, givesendgo.com, book project 2025, givesendgo.com/book project 2025. I'm raising money to support my publication of my next book. It's hell of expensive. I got too much stuff going on. Can't do it all. I need your help. So help me help you, because it's a fantastic book. And when it comes out, I know you'll be excited to read it and have it. Get my autograph, because it's going to go into the National Archives, and all that good stuff. So, but yeah, no, seriously, help me out with that. Book Project 2025 on Give Send Go. Check that out and donate. Like I said, raise money for that. And then the other thing is, if you're looking to lose weight and you're trying to, prepare your body for the winter. Because, we all gain weight in the winter time. So we're coming out of the summer, we're heading into the fall, and we tend to, eat a little bit more than we should. So if you're looking to, do that, check out Fix. It's simple drops that you put in your beverage, your water, your coffee, your soda, even your juice. Preferably your juices and your water. You stay away from the sodas if you can. I'm bad at it. I know. I'm the one to talk, but whatever. But I know better. When you know better, you do better. But it just takes time to get there. But check that out. And folks, I'm gonna get up out of here now. All right, I'll holler at you. Be safe. God bless you all. And thanks for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed today's program. You can follow, like, share, subscribe on Spotify, Substack, Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, and your news. And also, you can download Let the Truth Be Told app on your favorite streaming platforms, such as Fire Stick, Apple TV, and Roku. Take care. God bless.